You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Hi, welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In this episode, we're going to recap the hearings and the votes that were taken at the August 20th County Council meeting. There were several hearings and a lot of resolutions that were passed. Later in the show, we're going to have a chance to sit down with Councilman Shane Baker from the 3rd District, talk a little bit more about the property tax credit that was passed for the county firefighters and the auxiliary, some of the current politics and some of the challenges he sees up. But in the meantime, I'm joined here in a studio with our executive producer, Joe Venosa. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well, Joe. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Starting to enjoy this little bit cooler weather.
Perfect.
I think we still have some summer left, but
I'm going to tell myself that too.
yeah. So at the meeting that was on August 20th, this past Tuesday, there were actually 3 public hearings. The first one was about some funding for the library. And to give a little bit of baseline, right now we're in a position where the county has an agreement with Salisbury University that as this process happens to transfer the deed from the current public library into this lease where the Ward Museum used to be, the county is basically renting that space for $1 a year, next to nothing, while they work on plans, apply for financing, donations, grants, and that sort of thing. But what we saw at this public hearing was pretty concerning, I think, in the fact that their Director Hirschberger and Finance Director Pam Olin actually came to the County Council and they asked for $330,000 that was not in the current fiscal year budget. And that money, they said, was going to use for design of the renovations so they can apply for grants. You were there?
Yes. Yeah, that was the essence of their proposal. And there was a discussion, obviously. It was a pretty good back and forth about sort of what they were proposing and why. And ultimately, it came down to a concern that the grant that they are applying for has not been finalized yet. It's my understanding that the director of the library said there were 2 steps needed before that would be finalized. But the argument essentially was that this money being put into the pipeline now would make that grant more likely.
Well, they said that at first, and then as the county council asked them questions, I felt like they retracted some of that.
It was a bit unclear, and it did raise, I think, a couple red flags. And again, from my own side of things, I'll preface it by saying, I'm a huge supporter of the public library. It's needed. I think the relocation is a great idea. But there was a couple of really good comments made both by council members and a few members of the public, which is that part of why you have a budgeting process is so that you can foresee these steps down the line. And if you pass the budget and then come back repeatedly with another request, it really defeats the whole purpose.
And this
right?
was a budget that was passed 2 months ago.
Correct. And $330,000 is not chump change. It's a pretty big allocation. And so it raised a couple of questions. I think some people would say it raised a couple of red flags. The finance director was not particularly clear, I think, on sort of, the specifics of what this would allow. Well,
and let's talk for a second about these directors. These directors work directly for the county executive. So it's hard to know. There's a lack of transparency there behind what they've discussed behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And the only part we're getting is the public work session that the county council does, which is really concerning to us because we're really only being told what they want us to hear.
Correct. We know nothing about what happens between the library director, the finance director, the executive, and other people at that level. And so we only get to see a small sliver of that in public because, again, in the system of government we have right now, we have a transparent county council system to see how things are assessed, developed, and passed or refined. But we don't have that from the county executive branch.
Well, and to their credit, they did not say no. They just simply asked, as they do in a public setting, they asked more questions. They actually found out that this decision does not need to be made until the second meeting in September. So they simply moved it down to get more information.
Correct. I believe they voted on a consensus to vote on it next month, and I thought that was a pretty good suggestion by County Council President Cannon.
So specifically, it'll be at the September 17th meeting, which is on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. There's another meeting in between.
Correct.
But we got another 30 days for them to get more information and maybe, dig a little deeper.
Correct. And by that point, I believe they will have definite knowledge as to whether or not they received the grant.
So the next hearing was actually one that I've sat in on at the Parks and Rec meetings. The town of Sharptown has been looking to take over the parks, the Cope Bennett Park and Cherry Beach, for quite some time. They're the ones operating the recreational sports program, and out there they do a wonderful job. Actually, it's the biggest recreational program in the county.
Oh, I didn't
over
realize that.
200 participants.
Wow.
It's impressive. My group in Pittsville actually plays against them. They have a lot of volunteers. They do a nice job. But if you go to the Parks and Rec meeting, this MOU has been brought up. They had to vote on it there. It had to be revised, taken. This doesn't sound anything like the MOUs that were signed with Eastern Shore Undercover or Livewire Media at all.
So wait a second. You're telling me that for what you guys are doing in the county on this very important community effort with recreation and parks, you have to go through an open, transparent process of applying for the MOU, getting it regulated, examining it, and sort of putting it into the sort of the proper pipeline of public oversight.
Yes, and then even after all of that's happened,
Yeah.
it has to still go to the county council for public hearing. And, in this instance, no one stood up and had any opposition for it. But the transparent process was there. And
So rules for thee, but not for me. You could make the argument on this.
I think we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
The last one, and this was a little bit more intricate to understand, it was $1 million spent to buy 41.2 acres of property on Naylor Mill Road, not to expand the landfill, but this property is going to be used to mine soil for the landfill. And again, in the open hearing in the county council's questions, they got a chance to ask the public works director, or deputy director, I should say, I'm sorry, about how does this fit in with the Conley Mill property. And one question was raised, and it wasn't answered. And my background is agronomy and soils. It's boring stuff, but I love it.
Not according to Councilman Hastings. I mean,
Well, him and I share that passion, I guess. But they talk about this soil on this property, but we're already mining soil at Conley Mill. And it was interesting to see through the work session documents that this is going to extend out Conley Mill longer, which was a promise made by County Executive Bob Culver to community out there for it to be much sooner than 2038. It's so frustrating to see. I mean, $1 million is a lot of money, but we don't know what the plan is. There's not a plan. And Councilman Hastings has talked about this many times. He'd like to see more planning done.
Yeah, I mean, again, if the whole point is that you're going to spend this amount of money for a particular purpose in relation to other county resources like the landfill and other, possible parks, you should at least have a plan in place.
It's pretty
It's
scary.
pretty astounding that, the proposal is there with nothing behind it.
Well, thank you, Joe. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. I'm joined today with Councilman Shane Baker. Mr. Baker, thanks for coming out.
Glad to be here.
So this is your first term on the county council, right?
It is.
So what motivated you to run for office?
Well, I had done a lot of soul searching of running for sheriff, actually.
Okay.
And I thought about it, didn't think maybe it was my time. So I started thinking about what else I could do to help the community. And a few of my friends were like, why don't you try councilman out? So I've reached out to a couple councilmen, talked to them, and I thought, it'd be a good fit. I'm gonna give it a shot.
So you speak about running for sheriff, but I mean, what's your day job and what do you do full time?
So my day job, I work for the Worcester County Sheriff's Office. I retired from the Wycomico County Sheriff's Office 25 years. Well, I had 21 years at Wycomico County Sheriff's Office and 4 years with the jail there in Wycomico County.
Well, thank you for your service to our county.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see at the Sheriff Mike Lewis's work session the other day. I thought you brought a great perspective as a current and former Wycomico County Sheriff's Deputy. I mean, what was some of your thoughts about the work session?
Well, not to get in too lengthy of a conversation, but I happened to be on a cruise, and we pulled into port in Florida and turned my phone off airplane mode, and I had all kinds of texts and phone calls and emails about the MOU with Eastern Shore Undercover and the county executive's office. And when I read it, heard about it, I just couldn't believe it. As a former law enforcement officer in Wycomico and a current law enforcement officer in Worcester, you know, having a civilian with an encrypted radio, it's unheard of. I don't even know why anybody would even consider doing it. So, you know, I made some phone calls, talked to some people when I got back, and many law enforcement who I spoke to were against it. They were like, you know, he can't have an encrypted radio. It can be an officer safety issue. Depending on, you know, according to the MOU, he was going to wait 15 to 30 minutes before he broadcasted, you know, the calls for service. Well, sometimes, you know, as I said that night at the council, sometimes we'll clear a call, but stick around waiting to see if somebody comes home, or waiting to see if I'm looking for a wanted subject. Sometimes they're not there. I'll clear the call, wait on the house, and they'll show up. So, you know, if he waited 15 minutes and broadcasted that I was somewhere looking for a wanted subject, it could really cause some issues, you know?
Well, you know, we covered the work session and the press conference, the county executive's press conference, when she announced she was pausing the MOU. And one of the things I didn't put on the video, it was very thorough, was the county council's lawyer, Mr. Bob Benson. He broke down the entire MOU. How did you feel about his analysis of the MOU? Because it was line by line, right?
I thought Mr. Benson, as always, did a thorough job. I was very impressed. I had spoken to the sheriff and several councilmen about it, and I just, reading the MOU, I just couldn't believe it, you know.
So, I mean, what about the dichotomy between, you know, having Mr. Benson read his opinion in an open work session that's open to the public? We're obviously watching in real time. You all get the information as well. I know you've been briefed ahead of time, but versus, say, the county's lawyer, Mr. Paul Wilbur, and the executive almost doing this without a whole lot of knowledge of what was coming down the pipe, without a lot of collaboration.
Yeah, I was really surprised that this had transpired without the sheriff knowing it. You know, I mean, he's our elected head official in the county. He's the sheriff. He didn't know about it. The council didn't know about it. There was no transparency there on such a big topic. Mr. Benson, as always breaks everything down, explained it to the public. Of course, you had the councilman's points of view. You had the sheriff's point of view. And I think a lot of the points were well made and well received.
Well, one of the ones you made, and I actually played it on the episode, was that this wasn't just about Wycomico County. And I thought that in the county executive's press conference, she addressed it, but she kind of brushed it off. This isn't even just about Wycomico and Worcester County. This is about Salisbury, Delmar, Fruitland, and they weren't collaborated with either. I mean, Chief Mindshine said as much in his statement.
Right. There's been some back and forth of what the radio actually had on it, whether it could transmit, whether it couldn't, how many bands were on there for Worcester County, Somerset County, Dorchester, Salisbury. So without seeing the radio or going through the radio, I don't know what was on that particular radio, but I do know, like my radio, I can switch over to different agencies, listen in, talk to, in case we have like a mass casualty situation, we need to help Wycomico or Dorchester or whoever, we can communicate. So my first concern was, hey, this isn't just a Wycomico County thing. If, you know, Eastern Shore Undercover has a radio, like everyone else's radio, he has the potential of listening to everyone that's encrypted, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being encrypted.
Yeah. Well, so on a lighter note, and I think something that you should be very proud of. I mean, you worked really hard on help, and not just you, but it was a group of you, and I felt like you had the lead on it, getting the property tax credit passed, not just for the county's volunteer firefighters, but their auxiliary as well.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that. And one of the interesting aspects for me was that all of that was really done. The updates were all done out in public.
Right. So on the campaign trail, Julie Giordano, myself, James Wynn, it's no secret we were at a lot of places at the same time, and we spoke to a lot of different fire departments, and they were talking about that they needed something to help retain and recruit people. They had actually suggested a property tax credit. So as time went on, we got ready for the first budget. The county executive had decided, hey, let's move this till the spring. And I had a problem with that because we had made some promises on the campaign trail. Hey, we're gonna help you guys out. We're gonna try to help you with recruitment and retention. And I wanted to go on forward with it. Well, it was the first bill I had ever wrote. So I talked to John Cannon and Laura Hurley and said, hey, I want to do this. Let's do it. How do we do it? So they were a big help. We wrote the bill, and it ultimately passed.
So when you look at, I mean, in one of the folks, president of Firefighters Association is Holly Rattel. So Holly used public comments a lot to keep this in the public eye.
Yes.
Obviously, from a council standpoint, you did too. I mean, when you look at the almost pushing this down the road by the executive's office versus keeping it out in the open on the county council, whether the county council wants to or not.
Right.
I mean, Holly Wartell did a wonderful job of keeping that front and center.
Yes, she did. She did.
Then you look at something like this MOU, either with Livewire for the safari at the quarry or the one with Eastern Shore Undercover. There's times where, I mean, where did the citizens go? And the only place they went was the county council, but at least you were listening, right?
Right.
In both instances, you all either had work sessions or you passed legislation for the property tax credit. And it was all there for everybody to see, right?
Yeah, I think a big problem here in Wycomico County that we've had is transparency. A lot of times things happen that the council's unaware of, the community's unaware of. As you saw out in Shadow Hills, there was an uprising. What's going on? We don't want this happening every day or every week or every month. Let us know. And it really causes a lot of problems when you're not transparent. You're working for the public's not working for you. And they want to know what's going on. I always tell everybody, I'm an open book, call me. If it didn't happen in a closed session, be more than glad to share it. I don't like secrets anyway.
And it's very narrow what can happen in a closed session.
Very narrow. Yeah. It's got to be like a litigation type thing or a personnel type thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, pretty much.
Well, you were one of the 5 out of 7 who on the county council who voted for the referendum. I'd like to take a little break, and when we come back, I'd like to talk about this referendum, some of your standpoint, some of your viewpoints on it, and why you voted for it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Stick around. We'll be right back with Councilman Shane Baker.
Every summer, Sharptown comes alive with the lights, sounds, and excitement of the Sharptown Firemen's Carnival, a beloved tradition that's been in operation for nearly 100 years. This carnival isn't just an event. It's a time-honored celebration that has become woven into the very fabric of our community. For generations, families have gathered here to create memories, relive cherished moments, and enjoy the simple pleasures that only a small-town carnival can offer. Spanning several weeks in August, the carnival serves as a key fundraiser for the Sharptown Volunteer Fire Department. It's more than just a fun time. It's an essential lifeline for our local heroes. Each ticket sold, each game played, and each bite taken at the carnival directly contributes to the resources our firefighters need to keep our community safe. As you walk through the gates, the sights, sounds, and smells fill the night air, creating an atmosphere that's electric with excitement and alive with community spirit. From thrilling rides that spin and soar to classic carnival games that challenge your skills, there's truly something for everyone at the Sharptown Firemen's Carnival. Families line up year after year for their favorite treats, whether it's the crispy funnel cakes dusted with powdered sugar, the sweet and sticky cotton candy, or the legendary oyster sandwiches. These award-winning sandwiches have earned a reputation far beyond Sharptown, drawing visitors from miles around who simply can't resist their unique flavor. Whether it's the nostalgic pull of the Ferris wheel, offering sweeping views of the carnival below, the thrill of winning a prize at a ring toss game, or simply the joy of spending a warm summer evening with loved ones, the Sharptown Fireman's Carnival offers a unique blend of tradition and excitement that keeps people coming back year after year. But it's more than just rides and games. This event is a celebration of community and a vital support system for the brave men and women of the Sharptown Volunteer Fire Department. Each night they're not just running the event, they're here, connecting with the people they serve and protect. The funds raised during the carnival go directly toward maintaining and upgrading the department's equipment, ensuring they're always ready to respond when we need them the most. And the impact extends even further. The carnival also provides crucial support to the other community organizations, helping to fund local initiatives and services that benefit everyone in Wicomico County. It's a true community effort. If you want to be part of the tradition and support the heroes who serve our community, you'll need to act fast. This is the final week, and when the lights turn off on August 24th, they won't turn on again until next summer. Don't miss your chance to experience the magic of the Sharptown Fireman's Carnival.
Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White, and I'm still joined with Councilman Shane Baker. Thanks again for sticking around.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
So before the break, we got to talk a little bit about current politics and maybe some of the success and some of the challenges. We at the very end we talked about the referendum, and now I want to. There's one thing I want to say, and I've heard this from people who feel the other way. The first time that this got put on the referendum 18 years ago, that it was somehow done with signatures and a petition, and that's false, right? I mean, we've heard that opinion from the folks who were there. Mm-hmm. So the process that it takes to get a ballot initiative on is 5-2,
right?
And you were able to do that. We were talking about how out in the open the success was to get the property tax credit for the firefighters, the volunteers, and auxiliary. And some of the frustrations you had with these behind closed doors MOUs written. Why do you feel like we should move back to a county manager form of government versus a county executive form that we have right now?
Sure. So when I first got in office, I'm new, getting my feet wet, talking to people, and we tried to work well with the executive's office, but it just seemed like the executive just wouldn't work that well with the council. So, it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of controversy. And of course, I talked to Joe Holloway a lot about it, talked to John about it. And they both told me, it's been like this for a while with other county executives. The system, basically, if you have a county executive, for most places, is for a lot bigger of a county. And it just doesn't seem to work here. So as time went on, and trying to work with the executive and constantly the two forms of government butting heads, it just doesn't work. And when you talk about transparency and checks and balances, well, what better checks and balances is it to have 7 councilmen, 2 at large, 5 district representatives to come together and make decisions for our community? That's the check and balance, in my opinion, in itself.
How did you feel when, in the spring, when the executive's office was going through the process of negotiating the FOP contract with the police departments?
Sure.
Or the sheriff's office? There was deadlines missed. I mean, these are deadlines that are locked into the county charter. And then the question you asked of the finance director, and she flat out refused. I mean, it's on record. You asked for actuarial analysis so that you could make the most informed decision.
Correct.
And you were refused, correct?
Correct.
When you look at how easy it was for the executive's office to sign MOUs with a marketing company and a Facebook proprietor for news, and then how slow this process was. I mean, you're a police officer. How does that make you feel?
Well, a few months coming into the budget session and before we received the budget, I had reached out to the executive several times and said, look, why don't you brief us? Let us know what's going on. Let us know what you're thinking about putting in the budget, what you're thinking about not putting in the budget, so that when you present the budget, there's not a whole lot of issues. And several times she told me, she said, you'll get the budget when you get it. When I give it to you, that's when you'll get it. So speaking of the FOP contract, no councilman didn't want these guys to get a COLA. Most police departments in the state of Maryland, when you retire, you get a cost of living. Our particular pension system, like me, when I retired, what my pension is what it is. If I live to be 100, I get no COLA. Now they get a COLA. But as I tried many times to explain to the executive's office, you can't present us something and expect us to vote on it within a day, 2 days, 3 days, without having time to review it, making sure the citizens can afford it, right? Even though you might want somebody to have something, it's got to be affordable.
And not just for today, it's tomorrow too.
Tomorrow too, down the road. So, we had told the executive's office, we want an actuarial analysis not done by someone who is not an actuary person. We want our company, I believe we're contracted with a company called CBiz. And what I wanted to see was for CBiz to basically lay out a plan of, if you have 30 deputies, I think on average we have about 30 that could retire, and we gave them the 2.5% guaranteed COLA for life. Is this affordable? Can the county afford it? That's what I wanted to see so I could make a well-informed decision. And it come with a lot of controversy. You guys are stonewalling, you're not working with the executive's office. None of that was true. Every councilman, if I recall correctly, voted for the 2.5% COLA. We want them to have, we want the best law enforcement. You live in Wicomico County, you want the best, right? Well, that helps draw new people here when we have better benefits, better pay. And we wanted them to have it. But as I was telling many of the councilmen, and a lot of them agreed with me, how can we make this decision without knowing the facts? You have a business. You're not going to make any decisions on your business unless you lay out a plan.
I've got to make sure I can pay back the principal and the interest.
Right.
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the executive's office always touts transparency. And it wasn't as if you were asking these actuarial reports to be available to the public. You needed to see them as our representatives, right?
Well, the way I took it from Pam Olin was they had a few actuaries of employees that she used to come up with an analysis whether or not we could afford it or not. Well, being a retired Wicomico County Sheriff's Deputy, we all get an actuary. Before you retire, here's your statement, this is what you're going to make if you take this option, that option, so on and so forth. That's not what we were looking for. We weren't looking for specific employees. We were looking for, if 30 people retire at this rate.
And she refused.
And actually she got pretty upset about it. I had reached out to a couple people in the financial world and talked to them about this, and she got really upset and thought it wasn't that we didn't trust her. It wasn't that we didn't trust her. We didn't get the information we wanted.
Do you feel like the county government can be more transparent, more accountable, more efficient with a county manager form of government?
Absolutely. I can't speak much on other county executives, although I've heard this has been a problem, maybe not as bad as it is, now, but it's been a problem in the past. But when you've got 7, we don't have any problems on the council. I think most people see that when they watch PAC 14 or they come in person. We get along. We have 2 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and we have no issues. We don't argue. We don't fuss. We don't fight. A lot of times we all agree, even as Democrats and Republicans. But I think when you have 7 people that can come together and make those big decisions, and you have a manager underneath of the council, I think it would just be a lot better system than constantly fighting with an executive.
So it has been said that being on the county council is a part-time job.
Yes, it has.
I've been in a lot of your meetings, and it doesn't seem very part-time. I mean, how much time are you spending doing this?
You know, I'm glad you bring this up because I have heard it many times, even from the executive's office. You know, you guys are only here twice a month. You know, I am on the phone or checking emails or text messages every day, every day. You know, of course, we have our 2 mandatory meetings a month, but then most of us go to the fire department meetings. You know, we've got other community events we have to go to. We're fielding phone calls. I probably talk to Holly. You mentioned Holly earlier in the show. I probably talk to Holly at least once a day. You know, there's a lot of people that call me just about every day. A lot of people with concerns, a lot of people that just want to know what's going on, give you a peace of mind, but it's definitely not a part-time job. I guess it's maybe supposed to be, but it's not a part-time job.
Yeah.
I would say each councilman is working probably 2 to 3 hours a day, whether it's when they get off, nighttime, weekends. We're constantly working because you're a representative of the people.
Yeah.
And if they call, they don't want to hear you say, well, I don't meet me at the council meeting.
Yeah.
You know, they want
I'll see you in
answers.
2 weeks.
Yeah, they want answers today.
Yeah.
You know,
I know
so-
I've emailed you at 6:30 in the morning, and it wasn't any emergency, but I got a response within 24 hours. I think it was
Yeah.
later that same day.
Yeah, I try to respond as quickly as possible because that particular moment in that person's life, it's very important to them. Whether it be, you know, their road needs to be fixed or the trees are hanging out in the roadway or whatever. It's very important to them. Although you may not think it's that important on the scale of importance, it's very important to them. So I always try to call them back. I always try to get them in touch with the people of the county that can help them, whether it's the roads department, the sheriff's office. You know, I email the sheriff if there's a crime problem, email roads if there's a roads problem. So we're always working. It's not a part-time job.
Well, thank you for being accessible.
Yep.
We'd like to give you 3 minutes at our podium to speak about anything you wish. Will you stick around one more time?
Sure will. Sure
We'll
will.
be right back after this. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Here now is Councilman Shane Baker with his 3 minutes at the podium.
All right, sounds good. So I guess, you know, what I would say is with the experiences that I've had on the council so far, having enough time to evaluate what's going on, I think it's very important that the community come out and vote for the referendum, vote in support of it. We have to get back to work. We have to have people that are going to come together, work together, that want to work together and communicate. The communication factor now between the executive's office and the council is poor, to say the least. We've got to get back to communicating, working together. You know, this should not, it's not always going to be enjoyable, but it should be enjoyable. You know, you're a representative of the county. You're getting to make good decisions. You're able to help people. I want to help people, but I definitely encourage all the citizens that can come out and vote for the referendum. I think it will really get Wycomico County back on track again.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
I know you went out and worked your shift.
Yeah.
You ran home,
Yep.
threw some clothes on, and came out, and it means a lot. I see how hard all of you work. This is definitely not a part-time gig.
Right, right.
Although it's been characterized that way. And thank you for your time. Thanks for your service.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us this week for Open Agenda. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend.
I know what I'm doing, man.